Okay, welcome to my video. The first thing that I want to do is I just want to go through a couple of the textures and give you an idea of how I apply them. I prefer a round thing, and I often like red as a color to start with, and so some of them are soft, some of them are spotty. You really want a light texture, and some of these things might be good for other elements you're painting, or depending on if you're doing a soft or a brighter background, you might want just a subtle bit of texture. Wrong brush. We're going to go into set number 2 where these get a little bit stronger. Some of these are good all over textures. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm only going to pick some out. As you can see, these are excellent textures depending on what you want to use them for. Many of these were meant to be applied in a random kind of, why isn't that working? There we go. Where you get splotches, you get patches depending on where you hit. And that was intentional, because when you're creating things that are old and worn, you don't want consistency. You don't want everything to look like you applied a texture over the whole background. At least I don't. And so I like to mix things up. We'll choose different colors so you can see them being applied. Sometimes I do it like this, where I start a layer and then I add another layer. So this will be, we'll build a background as we're going along here. This is a distressed one. And again, every brush was intended to create particular marks. Some of them I lift my brush and I very lightly touch my Apple Pencil to the surface, and I add color. I put a couple of colors and textures on a background, and then I move on to different textures and different layers. So this one, we're going to add, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a darker red. Some of them have low settings, and you can see this one as a dusty texture, which may or may not show by the time I get to the end, but I'm not really worried about that. Put it on a little bit darker. We'll get flecks of things that'll show through as we build our layers up. I like orange. Orange and blues go well together. And as you can see, this might just be just a little touch of this and that. So if your brush doesn't apply everywhere you touch, then keep going, because it was meant to do that intentionally. Some of them will give you a deeper look if you apply more pressure. Some of them will only give you a lighter look. I like the yellow in there with the orange. I do want a little bit of this light shady turquoise. I like that look. Try out different brushes. Try them on individual layers so you can see what the brushes look like. As you play with them, if you don't like something, then simply undo it and choose a different brush. I undo a lot of things when I play, because some days I like things, other days I don't like the same things, and maybe it doesn't go with my background. I have no problem painting over things that are on under levels of layers, because that's part of the beauty of layering old paint. The reason that I use so many layers is that this is looking pretty good. Might even not look so good to you. Maybe it looks a little messy, but I'm not worried about that, because at the end, or any time in between, I can adjust the color adjustment, I can adjust the color balance, I can play with curves, I can play with blend modes. I can do a lot of things to edit what I'm working on. So I usually like to go up to the end and see what happens, because you just never know what you're going to like. Introduce colors you might not choose. Maybe just those little pops of that color are enough to just give it what it needs to grow. This is a wispy kind of messy texture, and maybe I'm not crazy about that, but I'm gonna leave it there. And then I'm gonna pick another texture. Maybe I'm gonna go for something a little bit more peachy. And I'm gonna turn my size up because I like the effect of the larger brush leaving larger marks as I go across the surface. And I'm not sure what I want this to be, but I'm kind of liking all of the colors. So if something's a little bit too strong like this red mark up here, I might just soften it as I go through with other colors on other layers. Each category has its own textures. I broke them up into groups because I feel they sort of go together, but also so that your brush packs are a little bit smaller. Sometimes brush packs can be overwhelming, and I don't like that for my linen texture. But you could see this one has the texture of a fabric in it, and I kind of like that too. So building up layers, we'll add another layer here, maybe something a little bit more rusty, different brush. I try not to use too much of the same paint. Some of these brushes, as you can see, this one apply with a little bit stronger of a texture, and I kind of like that mark that it makes. So I'm going to keep it. I think I'm also going to add it to the same thing, but if you go over some of them, like I can change the marks on this side to yellow. I might even want a little bit of white in there because sometimes those white flecks bring something up, and I kind of like that. It kind of looks like a little messy subway, excuse me, I needed water, graffiti kind of look. I have 8 layers right now. Sometimes I have more. Sometimes I keep going. Other times I stop here and I start playing by turning layers on and off and seeing what it does to the image that I'm making. If it leaves me with different color choices, that by leaving one thing out that I hadn't thought of, I can change the opacity. Like this layer is a little bit strong. I can lower it, or I can go in and I can change the blend mode on this layer. I might wind up with, that's kind of cool, a little bit dark for this particular one, but you never know what you're going to get. This one turned it very light. I don't go by names, of blend modes. I kind of scroll through them because depending on other blend modes I might have set for other layers, I get some interesting effects that I had not expected, and that's part of the surprise of playing and experimenting, and I kind of like that. This one has a very distinct mark on it, so maybe we'll try a blend mode on this and see if it gives me something I can use or not. Most of what I do is play. I'm going to go with the turquoise look on that. I sit and I play. I am not always creating a background for a particular piece. Sometimes I'm just looking for interesting backgrounds. Sometimes I'm just playing. I have time and I want to experiment and see what things do. Maybe I want to make a background collection for sale, which I also have on my site on Gumroad. And sometimes I want to make things for a specific purpose. And so I kind of like this. I'm gonna see what the purple does. I'm not crazy about that color in there. It is kind of dark. So instead of doing that, let's try to do color adjustment and see what that changes it to. Look, it puts it to a green or a pink. I'm kind of liking that bit of green right there. I don't want it to be too bright, so I'm going to put it right there. I'm also going to try changing the color of the blue, just out of curiosity, because you know what? Curiosity is pretty much what drives me most of the time. I just want to know what it does and how it looks and how it changes and if it's something I really like. And you never know what you're going to get. So by changing the mode to green, can make it a little bit brighter. And then I can come back here and change my blend modes and see if it does anything interesting to that color. I'm not in a hurry. I have lots of time to waste. And so this one here, we're going to try to change the color adjustment on that one. Curiosity. I kind of like the blue better. I think I'll turn the opacity down just a hair. Another thing that you can play with is color balance. Sometimes it makes a difference, sometimes it doesn't. You can see that it gives me more blue if I go this way in these sections in the center here, or it gives me more purple, and I think I'm going to go with the blue. And can also change curves. Curves are a fun thing to play with. Sometimes they go wild and other times they don't. I start at the top. Which layer am I on? I start at the top and I just start pulling color and seeing which way it goes. I kind of like it a little bit lighter. Sometimes it makes a difference. It's just another toy to play with. I want you to get accustomed to playing and seeing what you get. I kind of like that. That little, nope. That little yellow effect there. And we're going to turn that off. So I have a bunch of layers. I want you to know though, see, this is a layer mode. As I build other layer modes on top of it, the fun thing about piling up layer modes is that sometimes you put a layer up here and you get a different effect than you would if there were normal layers underneath. And sometimes that effect is very surprising and fun to discover. You can actually take 8 layers like this and slowly but surely change things, add another layer or two, change your colors, change your blend modes, and literally build yourself up a collection of anywhere from 10 to 20 or 30 backgrounds of the same style in a variety of colors, which is fun to do if that's how far you want to take it, or you can just make 2 or 3 that might fit a project that you're planning on working on. You can change your background color, which will certainly, right now we're set on white, change the look of the background. Sometimes you can go real dark, and other times you can change it to things and be totally surprised by the look. We can go around to greens, maybe blues, move this thing around. You don't always get something you like. I don't always get something I like. But the point is that I experiment and I have fun. And sometimes I discover some pretty cool things and wind up with a lot of interesting things. Mostly, again, I'm just going to go with mostly. I want you to have fun and I want you to experiment and discover what you can do with these brushes. I also sometimes come in here if I have a bunch of colors and I want to turn them down. I come in and I fill it with a solid color and I turn the opacity down because sometimes it's just enough to soften what I have there because I might like the look, but it might be a little bit too bold or punchy depending on what I'm planning on doing. I can change the color mode of that solid color that I have on top, and I can also try, we're going to turn this up a little bit so you could see the change. I can also try other colors. Maybe I want to try something more yellow. I kind of like that too, and it's softer and a little bit muted. Maybe I want to try an orange. Sometimes I have several blend modes on my list and I come in here and I try a color and it looks completely opposite of what I thought it would do because of the blend modes I have set. See, lighten turns that a different color. So this is really fun. This is how I create my backgrounds. I experiment and I play, and I'm not afraid. I can always undo things. I can always save things. Um, I can always undo things. There's so many options, and I want you to not be afraid to play around with the brushes and the layers and experiment. And so I find things I like, and I come back here and I share it as JPEG, and I save it to my images or I save it to my files. And I have literally had maybe anywhere from 8 to 20 layers, and I have created myself over 50 different backgrounds, occasionally adding in something new by changing colors and turning on and off different aspects of. That's also a pretty look. We can turn that edge one. Now we have a whole nother look. If I turn the yellow off, you can see it's a little bit brighter, and here it's a little bit softer. I can turn off different things and see how they affect what I'm doing. I would probably begin to add more layers right about here so I can get a stronger effect and a bunch of different options. But for now, I'm going to leave it as it is, because really I just wanted to share with you how I basically go through making my layers. If you have any questions, I'm always available. Read the reference guide, look at the brush marks that it makes, join the iPad group that I have going. There will be lots more brush sets and tutorials and inspiration for you to come join with us.